I'll have to.
Mike, what are you doing?
I'll have to.
Your attention, please. Can I have your attention, please? It's time to get this show on the road. We have lots to do. But first, I believe that we should honor our flag of our country, and if you all who are able to stand, please stand. I'll ask the Sheriff to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, that's some exercise to get for you right away. Make sure we get this dialed in so I don't get feedback on it. Welcome to Democracy in Action. I'm your moderator, Roger Nichols. I like to put acknowledgments at the front so people will actually be able to hear them. This program is presented tonight because these sponsors felt you needed to see the candidates up close and personal. The sponsors include the Mid-Columbia Senior Center for providing us the space tonight and helping to set up, Columbia Gorge News, Wasco County Farm Bureau, Cut Multimedia, the Dalles Area Chamber of Commerce, and the Dalles Toastmasters, who gave up their meeting night so that we could hold it here tonight. Couple of ground rules. For each office, we'll have the candidates introduce themselves. We'll all ask them to come up and sit together, and then answer one question at a time, passing the microphone so you hear everybody's answer before the next question comes up. It's universally acknowledged that the political environment these days is pretty nasty out there. Just to let you know, you left that behind when you walked through these doors. There will be no smears, no jabs, no sneak attacks or gotchas out here. Any attempt will result in immediate dismissal. This is grown-up time. And you will have a chance to talk with the candidates afterwards, and if you find a candidate you like, we encourage you to encourage them. Work in their campaign, put up a yard sign, even donate. The more people take part in the process, the better and more accurate the results will be. We're also recording the events tonight, and they will be up on the web by Friday, so smile if the camera points in your direction. And it's time for the obligatory reminder, turn off your cell phones, or if not, can you at least have a decent ringtone for a change? Thank you very much. We're going to start, and now some of the candidates tonight are not going to be present. We asked some that, there's so many of them, some of them have sent in questions and answers which we will have volunteers read, just as if they were here present. So we'll speed up the process. Again, we've got lots to go through tonight. I want to get it going. But our first candidate will be the sheriff. But before that, we have a special announcement. Lisa Gamby, Wasco County Clerk, wants to clear up something about scheduling, timing, and making sure we get all of our facts straight.
I can't, it starts to feedback, I'm sorry.
Good evening. Can everybody hear me in the back? It helps if you almost eat the microphone to be heard, I've found out. So I'm Lisa Gamby, I'm your Wasco County Clerk, at least until the end of this year. My colleague Chrissy Zog, our Chief Deputy, is running, and I will not be. That is one of 3 positions that even though we filed for the primary election, actually gets voted on in the November general election. That's because of the Oregon Constitution. It states that we file in case there are, like the candidate position for commissioner tonight. If you've got a lot of people that run, you need to have a runoff. Those 3 positions only had 1 candidate file. So I just want to make everybody aware, when you get your ballots, which mail out tomorrow, there will not be a contest for sheriff on the ballot. Okay, so when you get your ballot and you don't see a contest for sheriff to vote on, please don't call my office and say, what? You left it off the ballot. Doesn't go on the ballot until November. Does that make sense to everybody? So, I know there's been confusion about it, but yeah, don't try to write in sheriff this time, right? Don't try to vote for sheriff this time. It won't work. We always welcome your comments that people write to us on the ballot, but it still doesn't count as a vote for sheriff, right? Thank you.
All right, thank you, Lisa. All right, Sheriff McGill, you are on. We're going to move this along. As I say, we have so many people to do that. So the first question is to introduce yourself.
So, for,
Sorry, Lena, I turned it off.
oh, she turned it off. Already being silent, no, I'm kidding. Thank you, Roger. Yes, thank you for that clarification. My name is Lane McGill. I'm currently your Wasco County Sheriff. I've resided in Wasco County for over 50 years, and I've been in law enforcement for over 22 years and your sheriff for 8 years. That's pretty much where I'm at in a nutshell. I grew up in South Wasco County in Waumig, and I was a small business owner and then became sheriff in 2016. So since we're on a short timeline, I'll leave it at that.
Okay, and then the question we have for you, as the current sheriff of our county, you have had an opportunity to implement policies and led the sheriff's office. Could you discuss the most significant challenges you faced during your tenure and how you addressed them? Additionally, looking forward, what specific areas do you see as needing improvement? What plans you have to address those issues in your next term?
Okay, yeah, so when I read the question, I came up with four major things that we've dealt with in law enforcement, especially since I've been the Wasco County Sheriff. The first one is long-term financial sustainability and what that looks like for the Office of Sheriff and how we provide public safety services. Why that's important is because what we need to do in our office in particularly is to develop long-term strategies for long-term planning projects and different things like that. As you can imagine, in our business, things are very, very expensive. We're currently working on a radio project and a 911 project that's going to be pushing almost $1 million. And so being financially sustainable through all that and not burdening the taxpayers any more than they have to be, that's one of our top priorities. We actually have a new budget process. We're 3 years into that, where the county has agreed to allocate specific funding to all of our departments, and then what that gives us the ability to do is do long-term financial planning as a department, and then we can plan for some of these projects like I'm talking about. The other thing that we have benefited from that is like the Oregon State Marine Board program. We canceled over a 30-year contract with that program because it was not financially stable through the state of Oregon. We were actually better off to do it ourselves, and we're actually better off financially to provide, or not financially, but better off to put services out for our citizens on the water. CAD radio, I talked about that. Drone program, we've been able to make a sustainable canine apprehension program. We actually have a body camera program now. That's really, really rare in the state of Oregon for agencies our size, so we were able to do that. But one thing that I want to talk about is grant funding, because grant funding is super important in that financial sustainability. Every time we look at a project or every time we look at a purchase or anything like that, the first question we ask is there any grant dollars out there? If we don't ask if there's any grant dollars out there, then guess what? Shame on us. What I can tell you is since I've been sheriff in 8 years, we've racked up over $250,000 in grant funding for different projects that we've worked on throughout the county. And that's everything from operational stuff, from simple things from radios all the way to software projects and things like that. So financial sustainability and the benefits of that is very, very important to us. So the other thing that I wanted to talk about is staffing challenges. We know that that's an ongoing process in today's economy and the way things are. But one of the things that we're pretty proud of is that we've developed a new program and revamped how we hire people. And that program has been very, very beneficial. We hire men and women that are very, very, have a lot of integrity, a lot of character, and those types of things. Matter of fact, our interview process is completely different than a lot of other agencies because we do hire individuals that are on character. We hire highly qualified, very professional individuals in our organization. One of the things that I do want to talk about is we do have an excellent relationship with our collective bargaining unit at the Sheriff's Office. I don't know that there's a lot of sheriffs in the state of Oregon that can actually say that. I've heard a lot of stories, and I'm super proud of the relationship that we built with the collective bargaining unit. just to say how good it is, and that just about a month and a half, 2 months ago, we just ratified a 3-year contract where all of our employees received a 15% pay increase over 3 years. That goes along with retention and hiring as well. But we also were able to increase their health care, their dental care, and some of the other financial benefits, as well as wellness programs. So that's part of it. The other challenging area that we talked about was, and I'm sure you're going to hear a lot about this, but I'll start the conversation, is legislation. So we've got issues with legislation with Senate Bill 48, Measure 114, Measure 110, and we're working through those types of things, and we can talk about that later. And then one of the things is just improving our mental and behavioral health and substance use disorder programs here in the community. It's super, super important to do that. So with that being said, and I know I'm running pretty short on time, is we are working on some of these other things, and I wanted to just close by saying that where can we improve, or what can we do to move things forward? So we got to continue our financial stability, we got to work on legislation that's unfavorable for us, and we need to address some mental health, behavioral health, and drug and alcohol addiction things that we find and see in our communities. It's just that simple. It's costing us millions of dollars in our jails, our streets, our law enforcement is, tied up on these calls and stuff that cause a lot of things. So we got a proven track record of consistency with our processes through purchasing and hiring our employees. We intend to continue to be consistent. We've earned your trust for the last 8 years as sheriff, and I hope I can earn the rest of the 8 years for sheriff. So, thank you.
All right, thank you, Sheriff. Okay, we're going to do some things, maybe not in the most logical order, but the order has to do with who's here and how much time we're going to have to work with everybody. So next, we're looking at the state treasurer. I want to remind you, we are not accepting questions from the audience tonight. We just have way too many people to go in, and that usually invites attacks. We do not want any of that tonight. So we had 4 candidates for treasurer, and 2 of them were going to be here. One of them is here, I understand, and one of them has answered. So if the candidate can come on up, and if one of our volunteers who can read the answers for another candidate will join them. And go ahead and take a seat, get comfy. You won't be there long. But
I'm not running against you, I promise. You're more than welcome to.
So he will be reading the answers for Elizabeth Steiner, and try to imagine him as an Elizabeth, and that will keep you entertained at least for a while.
Good luck with that.
All right, so we will start with, and I'm going to correct me on your pronunciation. Is it Goodman or Goodman?
Goodman.
Goodman, all right, spelled G-U-D.
But
Okay.
as long as I'm called for dinner, I don't care.
There you go. All right. So, Mr. Goodman, if you will introduce yourself and take a couple of, we gave a little more dispensation to the sheriff because he's the only one, but we keep him as short as possible. We really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to be here. My name is Jeff Goodman. I'm a candidate for state treasurer. I'm a lifelong resident of this state. Grew up in the Portland area. Second generation on my mother's side, she grew up in Silverton, Oregon. Got my education at Pomona College with a BA in economics. Went back to the Wharton School, got my MBA. Came back here to Oregon because it's a state, quite frankly, that I love. Worked as an analyst, worked as a controller, worked as a treasurer, and then have been involved investing for the last 45 years of my life. It's a depth and breadth of experience that none of the other candidates for treasurer can match. Now, I want to give an example of the kind of approach and the values I want to bring to serving as your next treasurer. One of the jobs I had, I was in it for about 4 or 5 years, and I determined, based on what I was doing, that they didn't need my job anymore. It could be given to somebody else. And the work would be done just fine. So I recommended abolishing my own job. That's the kind of approach that I'm going to bring to serve as Oregon's treasurer. When you have things and you read about going over budget, that's not going to happen on my watch. We're going to catch it early and use those dollars elsewhere. So I want to be brief because there's a lot of good people who are going to be here tonight. But my name's Jeff Goodman. You can go to my website, www.jeffgudman.org. 45 plus years of experience. I'm not interested in anything else other than being treasurer. I want to serve 8 years and then go back, work in my yard.
Thank you. And now we'll introduce Elizabeth Steiner.
Thank you, Roger. I've got a deep voice for Elizabeth, I'm pretty sure. I'll read her answers here. My name is Elizabeth Steiner. I am running for treasurer to build a stronger, healthier Oregon. As a family physician, working mother of young adults, and experienced legislature with years of responsibility as the chief budget writer of the state, I understand the importance of financial security for every Oregonian. The state treasurer plays an important role in helping Oregonians achieve financial security, which in turn improves physical and emotional well-being. From the opportunities to help Oregonians save for their children's post-high school education to saving for retirement, my goal as treasurer is to educate Oregonians about these opportunities and help them become more financially secure.
All right, nicely done, Elizabeth. And now the second question, why are you running for this position?
Everybody hear the question? Good, okay. I'm running for it because, quite frankly, I'm the best qualified. Simple. I've spent 45 years of experience. Every profession, doctor, lawyer, plumber, electrician, farmer, rancher, you get better every year because you live and you learn. That doesn't happen overnight. I'm a better investor now than I was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And when you've got somebody in the treasurer's office who's going to be overseeing $130 billion worth of assets that you're investing on the behalf of the people of Oregon, you want somebody who knows what they're talking about. You also want somebody who knows when the best investment minds in the world come to Oregon to want to use some of our money to invest on behalf of Oregonians. Not only do you want to understand what they're saying, you want to understand what they're not saying. And that only comes from experience. I've got 45 years doing it.
All right. And the same question?
Elizabeth writes, I'm running for treasurer for the same reason I first ran for the state legislature. I want to help Oregonians build financial stability and live healthier lives. I ensure that PERS money PERS money is invested according to our values and protect the retirement Oregonians worked hard for. I'll also expand savings programs like the Oregon Saves retirement program, develop a mobile app, and create a voluntary savings program to help Oregonians prepare for emergencies. I plan to partner with unions, parent-teacher associations, faith communities, community-based organizations, and others to provide culturally specific financial education. I commit to doubling the uptake of 529 plans for the vast majority of Oregon children to save for post-secondary education. Finally, I'll continue to move Oregon's investment portfolio to net carbon zero emissions while maintaining fiduciary responsibility.
Okay, there's the softball questions. Now come the fun stuff. Wasco County's economy relies heavily on agriculture, which can be significantly impacted by market fluctuations and environmental challenges. As state treasurer, you would oversee state investments and manage financial policies. Could you outline specific strategies or financial tools you would propose to help stabilize and support the agricultural sector in rural areas like Wasco County?
1 minute or less, right?
Exactly.
Okay. I served 8 years on the Lake Oswego City Council. During my time of service, it could be defined with 3 words: infrastructure, infrastructure, infrastructure. If you don't have a first-rate infrastructure, you can't have a first-rate quality of life, and you can't have a first-rate economy. Part of my platform, which I've identified here, and I'll leave copies here for anyone who wants it, is to pull together groups from all over the state, particularly the voices that haven't been heard in the past, not the usual voices, to identify the specific projects that we want to do on infrastructure, whether it's the connection of a road, whether it's the rebuilding of a bridge, whether it's the rebuilding of a school, to provide the infrastructure so that every county, every city can be fully integrated into the Oregon's economy and into the United States economy and indeed the world. So it's going to be a focus on infrastructure, which isn't exciting to most people. It is to me.
All right. And Elizabeth writes.
This is a topic for which my legislative experience is especially helpful. As a state senator since 2011 and budget co-chair for the last 3 biennia, I've developed the ability to build coalitions of support and cultivate bipartisan relationships across a wide spectrum of stakeholders and issues. I've also developed a deep understanding of the state's financial situation, developed from our overseeing billions of dollars in budget and capital construction investments. I have worked hard to bridge the urban-rural divide in the budget-making process, traveling across Oregon to meet with rural stakeholders and understand their needs. Last year, I partnered with farmers, ranchers, and business owners in the Umatilla Basin to help meet their water sustainability needs with $6 million in targeted investments. I also traveled to Baker and Malheur counties last fall to understand the impact of fire protection fees on timber and grazing landowners. As co-chair, I've made sure the Joint Committee on Ways and Means hosts an annual roadshow traveling across the state to different communities in order to meet people where they are and hear their concerns about how state funds should be spent. As treasurer, I will continue that practice and commit to taking the time to learn the needs of rural stakeholders. As a member of the Municipal Debt Advisory Commission, Land Board, and Oregon Growth Board, the treasurer has many opportunities to support and foster growth in our state's rural communities. I will use these opportunities to help Oregonians across the state achieve financial security and live healthier lives.
Thank you both, appreciate that. All right, next up we're going to Senate District 29, and we have, I believe. So the way we'll work this is we'll start, at each question will start with a different candidate, so everybody gets a chance to think last, all that fun stuff. So we'll start from this end, this way, for the first one, and do the introductions for each other.
Yeah, thanks for having us here, guys. This is great. I think this is somewhere around my 43rd trip through Wasco County, and no, we were down here the other day and then back up to Enterprise and back down here again today. I'm Jim Doherty, and I'm running for State Senate for you. I was born and raised in the district in the headwaters of Big Butter Creek on the Morrow and Umatilla line. I'm the 7th of 9 kids. My father was one of 13, grew up on a big sheep and cattle operation. My wife and I and my son went down to Willowdale on the south end of the district here in Wasco County and began building our own cattle operation and our own live family. And we have about 750 cows, about 1,000 irrigated acres, and during the process, I was elected twice as a county commissioner. In my first year, my first term, I was elected into the ascension to become the president of the Association of Oregon Counties. I'm pretty sure it was the first time a first-term candidate has risen to that role. It's generally somebody in the second or third term. So I also was in addition to that, sit on the Oregon Hanford Cleanup Board and the Greater Hanford Cleanup Board, the Oregon's Alcohol and Tobacco Policy Commission, and happy to be here and happy to save some time. So thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Andy Huey. I'm a 7th generation Oregonian. Let's scratch that. 7th generation Mid-Columbian. My family is from this region, specifically in this state. We go back since the Oregon Trail came down. My family here actually helped with a large part of Chenoweth, George and Ben Snipes. We also had connections across the river with Alonzo Curtis, and we stayed throughout this region for a long time. I spent 66% of my life growing up right here around this area of the Dalles. This is my home, this has been a long part of my community, and I am excited to be here and trying to run to represent you in Salem, covering Senate District 29. My grandfather here, great-grandfather, I apologize, Cliff Smith, owned McFadden's Auto Parts here in the Dalles. So I'm around here, I know the region, I'm not new. I spent the last 6 years growing up in Wallowa County. With that experience, I have became very active in politics. I worked for Representative Bobby Levy, who covers House District 58 out in Eastern Oregon, covering Wallowa, Union, and most of Umatilla County. And I was her in-district liaison representing out there. I am also the secretary of the Young Republicans of Oregon. I have been in that role for a term now and excited to continue to see that organization grow. I am also an elected PCP in Wallowa County, as I see some of the PCPs here in Wasco County. I'm very excited that everybody chose to show up. And I am also the Director of Political Affairs for the Associated Students of Eastern Oregon University. Even though I look quite young up here, I've had quite a lot of experience. Last session, during the long session, I had 14 bills written, 13 of which were submitted, all focusing on education around the GED and high school programs that were needed with credits. So I'm going to try to save a little bit of time. We have plenty of more questions coming up. But first off, I want to thank you guys all for coming and being engaged citizens.
Thank you, and congratulations all the organizers on a great turnout here. My name is Todd Nash. I'm running for Senate District 29 from Wallowa County. I currently serve there as Wallowa County Commissioner. I'm immediate past president of Oregon Cattlemen's Association. I live in Wallowa County with my wife. My 4 grown children are there and 6 grandchildren, and I'm missing a baseball game tonight, and my little granddaughter's catching, and I just got sent a picture here a little bit ago. But I'm running for this office in kind of an ascension, and I started taking leadership roles about 20 years ago. Was asked to run for county commissioner in 2016. Took the office in 17. It's been the greatest job I've ever had. I simultaneously took leadership roles in Oregon Cattlemen's Association, and I think it was a good combination there that I could advocate for both statewide issues and my county. Really proud that there's a good representation from Oregon Farm Bureau here tonight. I'm the sole endorsement here for Oregon Farm Bureau, and we have a letter going out today that there are several commissioners here that there were 39 commissioners that endorsed me in this campaign as well. I look forward to working for this state, for this district, and taking what I've done in Wallowa County and that statewide position with Oregon Cattlemen's and carrying that on for the whole of the District of 29 here. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Dave Drossman, and I just appreciate all of you turning out tonight. Great turnout, becoming informed voters, and so thank you for coming and listening to us and getting to know us a little bit better. 25 years ago, I got an opportunity to move to Hermiston, where I was able to start a small business and grow that in Hermiston. Moved there with a young wife and 2 young kids. My wife and I just celebrated our 30th wedding anniversary. And so for me, my commitment to civic service has been trying to make my community a better place to live and grow a family and raise a business. And so for the last 20 years, I've been doing that. I served in the capacity of the Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors. I served as the Booster Club president for over 10 years. We gave and raised funds for activities and athletics. I was elected to the school board for 8 years, and I'm the current mayor of the city of Hermiston, and I've been there for about the last 11 plus years. A few years back, I was elected to the League of Oregon Cities Board of Directors. I currently serve as their president. I represent 241 cities, 70% of the state's population, 1,500 mayors and councilors. The reason I got involved in this is because I want to make this district better as well. We've had a lot of great success in my community. I'd like to share that across the district and see if we can bring a stronger voice down to Salem and make sure that our voice is represented. I think people are tired of not being heard out here, and I want to take our voice and our values and my experience down to Salem to create a greater environment for the Dalles and the rest of Senate District 29. Thank you for coming tonight.
All right. Pass it, yeah, if you'll start out this time. And the question is, another easy one for everybody to get you loosened up here, and that is why you're running for this office.
There's a large amount of reasons that we're running for office. I specifically got in looking, as you look, I'm pretty much the young guy up here. I'm one of the youngest, being involved actively, even on state level politics. And looking forward, I don't see a future to be able to stay in the state. My siblings, I'm a triplet, I have a younger sister, they don't see an ability to be able to stay in the state. I have 2 colleagues here that I know, and they don't have much time being able to stay in the state. The state is not working for everybody, and I know a lot of you guys are starting to feel the pinch of inflation, business leaving, the loss of job opportunities. We just had a conversation earlier about Dutch Brothers, and it's how packed it's been. They're shipping off 40% of their executive team that has been sitting in Grants Pass to Phoenix, and they're not going to be here anymore. Clearly there's something not working for this state, and we need to have somebody in there that's not only looking for my grandparents' future, who's just down the road not too far, my parents' future, my own future, but also the future of my kids, their kids, and my great-grandkids. We need to be having a long-term vision for this state, and at this pace, I don't see a vision for any of those generations to be able to continue to stay here and survive. I'm a 7th generation. I want to be here. I do not want to have to go move to Idaho. I don't want to have to move to Montana to find cheaper areas to live to be able to afford basic necessities.
I didn't expect to be here, first of all. So I was a cattle rancher and a logger for a good share of my life, and it was a great life. I found myself defending myself and others, and then I found myself in town trying to defend myself against 5 endangered species that were on my grazing permit, and then advocating for neighbors, and then eventually being asked to run for county commissioner and taking those leadership roles. Now it's become one of those organic things to where I've been heavily involved in state politics since 2010. And I've had some real successes there with a number of bills that were introduced. In fact, the very first bill that was introduced in the last long session that cleared and passed and was signed by the governor was one that I advocated for with Senator Hansel. And the very last bill that went through before the gavel came down in Ways and Means and in the House of Representatives was a bill that I partnered with Senator Hansel on. And so it's nothing new to me, the processes. It will be different and a new learning experience on the other side of the diocese, but I want to take what I've done in advocating for Eastern Oregon, for rural Oregon, for agriculture in Oregon, and take that to that next level. And I can't wait to do it. I'm really glad for the opportunity to have that.
I got in this race for a couple reasons. Our kids and the future of our grandkids. You know, the state's been an amazing place for me to raise a family and grow a business. I worry about the future for my kids and our grandkids. And you know, people are leaving the state, businesses are leaving the state. We've got to turn that around. And so, you know, I'm going to talk about 5 things. Number 1 in drug abuse. Number 3 in behavioral health disease. 4th most expensive state in the nation, and 48th in educational performance. Those are not statistics I'm proud of, and those are not the statistics I want our kids or our grandkids to look up to. We've got to turn the state around. We've got to bring businesses back. We've got to bring families back. We've got to create a livable community that's safe and affordable. That's why I'm going to Salem. That's why I got involved in this race.
Yeah, thank you. I got involved in this race because District 29 in Eastern Oregon here needs somebody with passion that can go down there and move the dial and work for everybody while preserving our civil liberties and our values. I would go down there and work for the irritated independent if I might. If I can use Umatilla County as an example, there's 15,000, and you guys can equate that to the Dalles or Wasco County, there's 15,000 registered Republicans. There's 8,000 registered Democrats, and there's 22,000 non-affiliated voters. Fully 2/3 of the folks here in 2 weeks will not be able to vote on who's going to go down there and take care of those shopkeepers, take care of the folks trying to buy their first home, ensure that Andy can stay here, ensure that the things that the mayor discussed get taken care of. We need somebody that can go down there and has a track record of moving the dial. I took on the nitrate challenge in the Columbia Basin when nobody else would stand up, not a soul. It will be the biggest thing that's ever occurred in this district for people's health and the environment. And we couldn't get a single other Republican to stand up and do a thing because they were beholden to the big money interests. You've got to stand up and do what's right when it's time to do what's right, and yet preserve our conservative values. Thank you.
All right, we'll pass that down here. We'll go to question number 3. As a candidate for the Oregon Senate, what are your top legislative priorities? It's longer, but I'm going to shorten it right down to that.
Yeah, and to try to get that summarized in 1 minute is pretty tough. One of the top priorities for me is the CAT tax, the corporate activity tax, and so that burden, that threshold, when you hit $1 million of gross income and then start paying taxes, whether you're profitable or not, has to be one of the top priorities. When we look at these farmers here, they have no way to pass that on. There's a lot of farming that grosses $1 million really fast. John F. Kennedy, he said, the farmer is the only one that buys retail, sells wholesale, and pays the transportation both ways. When he buys a product, he pays that tax on that product that he buys that part for, or piece of machinery. And then when he goes to sell his product, he has no way to pass that on. And he can be unprofitable at the same time and just have a gross out there. And it's a terrible tragedy what's going on with that. It brings in a tremendous amount of revenue that the state is becoming accustomed to having. But at the same time, that tremendous amount of revenue is coming off the backs of people that may be barely making it. I advocated for an increase of the CAT tax to $5 million threshold. It would take some of those people out that are just in that smaller margin, don't have the efficiencies of having accountants on staff and different things like that. It just compiles. It gets very difficult, and when you get your taxes done by your CPA, it's more difficult for them, and they're going to charge you more. So that's one of them. It's hard to hit on all of them in 1 minute, but thank you.
So the top 3 priorities that I have: the cost of living in the state of Oregon is too high. We've got to protect against the rollback of our civil liberties, and government spending and taxation is too high as well. So how do we change that at the government? We've got to work on our energy policy. Currently, when you see PG&E and PP&L raising their energy costs by 51% over 3 years, that passes on to the businesses and the families in added costs of transportation, added costs of housing, added costs of groceries. We've got to change our energy policy and have a better energy policy to bring those costs down, as well as government regulation, taxation of our businesses. Those businesses add on their profit on top of that. That also drives your costs up when you go to the store to buy your groceries. These young ladies in the front row, they don't get high increases in their senior Medicare or Medicaid funding, or Social Security funding. And so how can they afford to continue to live on those where you're having 10 and 15% cost of living increases every year? I will stand up to protect 2A rights. I'm the only endorsed candidate up here for Oregon Gun Owners Association. I'm also supported and endorsed by multiple sheriffs and police officers because they know I'll stand up and protect your rights to not pull back on any gun laws that we currently have. And I also am going to work on bringing down the cost of government. Right now we think we can just throw money at the problem and it solves the problem. And so a lot of that money is coming out of your pockets, and that should be staying in your pockets so you can afford to live in this state. So we need a more efficient, more effective form of government. We need to bring down the taxation that you guys are paying for those services and bring that value back to you where you deserve it.
Yeah, thanks. I think it's super important to understand that Senator Hansel's moving out right here at the end of the year, and whoever will prevail in ultimately November or May here will move into that role. Insofar as that will happen, I've talked to Senator Hansel, and he said there's an ability for him to drop bills in this fall before he exits, so that whoever takes that role up next year can hit the ground running with some bills that are already crafted. And so I've been working with my team, and we've drafted a half a dozen pieces of legislation, not the least of which I'll just run across them in no certain order, is a land grab measure, right? One of the largest farm and forest owners in Oregon now is a member of the Chinese Communist Party, and I think those lands need to stay in our hands. I've got a starter housing bill. The average house cost now is $400,000, and a young man or woman or partner that want to start out have to make upwards of $100,000 and not have a car payment, a credit card payment, or a student debt loan, and they can't do these things, so we've got to drive those costs down. The other thing is childcare, right? We've got to find a way to push that down. It's more than a second mortgage. And so these are some tough things. I'll save some time. I'm also working with Sheriff Lowry, who's here, on getting some legislation crafted so that the folks that are coming north, muling the drugs through Wasco County or Sherman County in his case, and they get stopped, and he clearly knows they're a drug dealer, he still does not have the ability to turn them over to the federal authorities. And I seen here a little while back up in Oregon, not in Metro, a mom said, it's been a year since my son died from a fentanyl overdose, and another mom said it's been a month for mine, right? So we've really got to step in there and do something. And lastly, I've crafted trying to push back the Office of Rural Policy, which Kulingoski brought into effect, and it effectively sets up an equal number of R's and D's in the House and the Senate, the agencies that work with the rural area and rural representatives, and they only focus on rural issues. I'd encourage you to Google it, the Office of Rural Policy, and it was the last time we got an equal measure of our tax dollars back, so I want to get that put into law. Thank you.
As I said, there's a lot of reasons why we're running, but some of the top issues that we have focused on, especially me, as mentioned, the previous session I had bills focusing on education. Education is where you first start. A lot of the problems has been education control has been ripped away from you guys here at the local level and has been brought back to the state. The school boards have lost power. The local community has lost its power to make its own choices on what's going on. And the state has added more regulation to make it impossible for a young person to be able to leave the education system. We've gotten rid of the graduation requirements, and you can't go to college without having the basic arithmetic, science, and reading comprehension levels. If you're not able to do that, you're not going to be able to succeed moving forward. On top of that, the basic conversation we've also had is the cost. The cost here is abnormally high. I know Hood River County is not a great example to use, but as we've seen, more people are coming down from Portland and settling in the area, and it's continuing to encroach further down the gorge. Hood River right now, as a county, has a 700% tax increase proposed for its city parks and its county parks. And most of the people there can't afford that. How do we, in a few years when that tax is proposed here, how do you guys expect to afford that? I can't see myself affording that. As a young person who's actively working and being in the industry, I can't afford that. My rent's already $1,500 a month, and I have a closet for a little space. I know other people who's paying $250 plus a month, $205,000 a month. Sorry, my brain is getting a little ready. So we need to have a larger conversation to address these. The other area, which I'm excited to see what's moving forward here in the Dalles, you guys have good stuff moving forward with healthcare in the future, but healthcare is another big thing. We've had conversations about public safety and law and order and the 911 centers, but even just within this region, a few counties down, they're having discussions of getting rid of the Frontier 911 system, which covers Sherman, Gillum, Jefferson and Wheeler County, which is how they get their 911 controls out. And they're gonna have to move those around. So there needs to be larger conversations of what's going on, and there's a lot of different things, but I don't have much time.
That's it, thank you. Okay, final question for you folks. The 1979 Oregon legislature, you may remember, passed the 2% kicker law, which requires a state to refund surplus revenues to taxpayers when actual general fund revenues exceed the forecast amount by more than 2%. So the question to you is, has the situation changed enough in 45 years to warrant re-examining or adjusting the kicker?
So I'm not going to be going to Salem to vote to take away your kicker. So the state got a 20% increase in revenue last year. How many of you got an increase in 20% last year? Not many, right? We don't have a revenue problem at the state. We have a priorities and policy decision problem. We need to bring down the cost of government. And our economists should do a better job. The last 3 bienniums we've missed on our tax kicker. They took $5.5 billion out of your pocket and returned it back to you 2 years later with no interest. If you don't pay your taxes, you have a fine and an interest payment. Okay, why isn't the state paying you back when they've taken that away from you for 2 years? So I'm not going to go down there to roll back your kicker, but I'm going to go down there to bring down the cost of government. And I think that's the thing that we should be focusing on, because right now, too much of your money is coming out of your pockets and going to Salem. It should be staying in our local communities where it can do good and help buy down your cost of living.
Yeah, I totally agree with the mayor. I think it's a little closer to 5.6, and the previous record was 1.9, but every 2 years over the last decade, they've missed the guess on what they think the revenue is going to be. I'm not going down there to take away your kicker either, but I'm going down there to get more back for your kicker. It disproportionately comes back to working class folks. It disproportionately comes back to minorities and indigenous folks, and the folks that are living paycheck to paycheck in a quirk in the system. So it's important to know that like the mayor said, that you shouldn't have to pay in there, right? You got the opportunity costs of those dollars, and they are in the coffers of the state, and they really should be in your pocket. And when they do return, they need to return to the working folks in a little higher volume. Thank you.
Well, the first part of the conversation with the kicker is our state budget. Our state budget is way too high. It's $88 billion. Most people can't sit there and fathom that number, but you're hearing some of the failures that are occurring in our state, and we're spending $88 billion in our budget, and where's our money going? We aren't seeing it. In the future, what I would hope is I make the tax kicker obsolete, as that money never left your hands and we cut enough stuff that we were actually being able to continue to survive as a government, and hopefully deregulate and make it easier for you to be able to understand what's going on. The budgetary process is quite insane, and a lot of people looking at some of these stuff don't understand what they're reading. I went in as a legislative aide and trying to figure out what's going on, and that was a struggle for my first few years. If somebody like me who's been educated on it is struggling to understand, how do we expect you, who's the taxpayers who put your money into the system, are expected to understand what the heck is going on? Should we have a conversation about, should more money be going back to your pockets or never even leaving your pockets in the first place? Yes, we should be having you keep your own money.
Yes, we need to protect the kicker. That's your money to begin with. We need to balance our budget and do the very best we can to put contingencies on each of those line items, which we're required to do. But to save money, to put that money aside that is your money for a rainy day, that's what those contingency lines are for. We don't need to keep an additional $5 billion in the coffers just for that rainy day fund. So I'll definitely protect the kicker and make sure that it comes back to the people that own it to begin with.
Okay, thank you very much. All righty. This is for House District 52, and we do have a candidate here. The other candidate did not submit anything, so this is going to be a one-off. You get to answer all the questions yourself.
A one-off.
Okay, so you get to start by introducing yourself.
Yeah, okay. Well, my name is Nick Walden-Poublon. I am running for state representative in House District 52, which runs the area of 4 different counties. So it starts over in eastern Clackamas, East Multnomah, all of Hood River, and then where we are here in northwest Wasco County. I am a lifelong Oregonian. I've grown up for many generations here. I grew up in Harrisburg, which is a little bit north of Eugene, and my first job was milking cows. My family put me to work as soon as it was legally possible, and I headed out and started milking cows. I put myself through college twice, once at the Portland State getting my bachelor's degree in history, and then the second time getting my master's degree. I am a former legislative aide to the last Democrat who held this office. So I did spend some time in Salem working on constituent services, and one of the things that I found the most rewarding of everything that I got to do was working on constituent services, solving issues around water rights issues, trouble with the DMV, gun licenses, things like that. People struggle for years in a quagmire of red tape, and sometimes sending an email address out from a legislative email address can help grease those wheels and solve those problems. And so that's something that I look forward to doing when I did.
Okay, and the next easy question, why are you running?
I'm running because I'm a fighter. My first year of grad school, it was actually the first week of grad school, I was diagnosed with a brain tumor at the base of my brain. And your plans for the week and the month kind of change. And I went to the university that I was at the time, Portland State University, and they had a really terrible health insurance plan that they purchased off the shelf for students, and they expected students to just kind of figure it out on their own. And I said that this is not going to work for me. And they said, well, let's use this platform that you have right now, and we'll make you the chair of the Student Health Advisory Board and see if you can do anything. So going to school full-time, working with a brain tumor and running this board, I was able to fire the United Health Insurance company that we had working for the university within 3 months. And we renegotiated health insurance for 28,000 students on our own for the first time in student history at Portland State University. I want to do the same thing in Salem. I want to go to work. I want to make sure that we find solutions to problems. I'm willing to put it all on the line. I'm a former student health advisor at Portland State University, where I actually served for 10 more years after I helped solve the health insurance problem. The university created a position for me and asked me to stay. I stayed for 10 more years. I learned a lot about health policy, about what it takes to actually get from health insurance to health care. And I want to be that expert in Salem.
All right, and what are your main legislative priorities?
So I spend about 2 or 3 hours a day talking on the phone to people in the district, asking them what their big issues are and what it is that they want to see in their next legislator. Housing is a huge issue. It affects people across the board, not just in, like we saw in this previous race, where someone was talking about not being able to stay here in Oregon. It affects folks in that they're not able to find jobs because we suffer economically. A number of people up the mountain have talked to me about the fact that their businesses want to expand, they want to build, but they can't find workers to actually be able to live in the areas, to work at the jobs that they want to be able to provide them. And that's a big problem. That affects more than just houselessness, that's an economic issue. So that's one major issue that I would work on. Healthcare is another major issue that I would work on. I've been in the trenches. I know what it's like when a doctor looks at you and tells you that the solution to your problem is out of your reach, and then you have to go on. And so I want to make sure that we expand access to healthcare. And we do make that jump, like I say, again and again and again, from having health insurance to actually getting healthcare.
All right, and finally, in your theory of representation, do you believe that you are simply there to pass on the views of the majority of your constituency, or that they elect you to do the best judgment you have with your additional knowledge they do not?
I think it's a little bit of both. It's not one or the other. It's important that we listen to constituents. What you guys think and how you want me to vote in Salem is very important to me. But at the same time, it's my job to be an educated person in Salem and to make sure that I'm paying attention to the facts of the matter, and that I present to you as constituents all the facts so that you can help me make the best decision possible and that we can approach issues together. I'm a small town Democrat. when things get rough, like they did in this recent storm that we had that demolished 2 houses on my street, nobody checks to see who has a D behind their name or an R behind their name. It's about figuring out how we solve the problems of the people in the community and how we make sure that people get back up on their feet. And so when I go there to Salem, I will be the person who works across the aisle. I will be the person who shows up to events like this when you invite me and when you don't invite me, quite frankly. I want to travel this district. I have a car for a reason. I'm going to get around and see you all and make sure that you see my face plenty from now until November. So I want to thank you for that.
All right, thank you very much. Do this the same as we did the other. We'll just start at this end and work down and introduce yourselves, please.
My name is John McEllerin. I'm a general contractor. Is that better? My name is John McEllerin. I'm a general contractor in the county. I do about 90% of my business here. I see a lot of people and what's happening. Sorry. I've served on the Water District Board of Directors for Ballot Water District for 3.5 years in the past. I'm not a professional politician. I want to listen to people. I want to hear what you have to say. I'm nonpartisan, and it's the best I can do for you. I want to do the best I can.
Good evening, thank you for being here. My name is Jeff Justison. I was born here in the Dalles. I was then raised and graduated from high school out in Sherman County. Went off to college, graduated from Willamette University with a degree in psychology. After a couple of years of figuring out what I wanted to do when I grew up, I went to work for Wasco County in 1990 for the juvenile department. Spent 13 years there, then was hired by Norcor as the detention manager at the juvenile facility and worked there until I retired in 2022. As a detention manager, I was responsible for creating and managing the budget of the juvenile facility. I supervised employees. I created, maintained, managed contracts with other counties, with state and federal agencies. And I attended board meetings as a staff member for 19 years, monthly board meetings, so participated in those. I was lucky enough to be involved in a couple of leadership programs while I was there. One, the American Leadership Forum of Oregon, and the other was the Applied Leadership Network through the Annie Casey Foundation, which is was a national juvenile justice leadership program. On a personal note, I'm married to my wife, Dawn. We raised our 2 kids here. I've been a high school basketball and volleyball official for over 30 years in each sport. Spent over 20 years coaching baseball and softball in the area, sometimes my kids, sometimes other people's kids. And in my spare time, I like to golf and travel around.
My name is Darcy Long. I grew up here in the Dalles. I lived here until I went off to college at Willamette University. And after that, I moved on to Washington, D.C. and a couple of other places to live and work. And then eventually came back here to raise my family, working for Wasco County at the Commission on Children and Families as the Early Childhood and Parenting Education Coordinator. I'm currently on the Dalles City Council. I'm serving my 2nd term, so I'm 7 years in. My 8th year will end this year, December 31st. And I have served on many, many boards and commissions, as well as nonprofit organizations. And not only have I served on those boards, rather than sometimes what people say is sitting on those boards, I have also chaired many of those boards.
Good evening. Hi, I'm Dan Richardson. Thanks for being here tonight. So you all are the hiring committee for this job, and I would like you to keep 4 things about me in mind when you're taking a look at the applicants. One is my personal background. I grew up in the Dalles and graduated here, and my wife and I have returned and raised our family. So we're pretty ensconced. My professional work in water resources and wildfire hazard reduction, these things are really important across Wasco County. My community service, for the last 15 or so years, I've served in a variety of volunteer roles and boards, and I am a city councilor in the Dalles. And my preparation for this job, for the last 8 months or 9 months, I've been going around the county and listening to people in every community to really get a sense of what they think their critical issues are for our community, both individually, for the Dalles, Moffett, Mosier, etc., but also collectively as a group of neighbors. If you put all that together, I think that makes me the most qualified candidate, and I would really appreciate your vote for county commissioner.
My name's Brian Lauterbach. I'm here to run for county commissioner. I'm here with my beautiful wife Michelle in the back here, and we have a family of 5 adult kids, 2 grandchildren, a new farm dog, and a cat. If anybody wants a cat, we're willing to give that away. We have a small farm here in the Dalles. We raise lavender and we raise some Cabernet grapes, and so a little bit about me and my background. I grew up here in the Dalles. I graduated in '79, went off into the Army for a little bit for the National Guard, came back to the Dalles and started my career with Les Schwab, where I ended up 16 years as a manager for the company. After that 16 years, I bought a tire store in Whitefish, Montana, and I moved there and spent the next 11 years running a business in personal business there in Whitefish. And currently I'm 11-year realtor here in the Gorge, mainly focusing on commercial real estate, but also some residential as well. As far as being involved with communities and civic boards, I spent a lot of years on a school board in Whitefish, Montana. Also a hospital foundation board there, and the one here in the Dalles as well for about 8 years. And Chamber of Commerce board here in the Dalles, Rotary, Lions, Kiwanis. Those are all service boards that I was part of as well. Yeah, so that's a little bit about me and my background. And yeah, just appreciate you guys being here.
All right, you'll pass that down there. We'll get on to the next softball question, which is, why are you running?
Thanks, Roger. I didn't have designs on being in public office when I was growing up. Throughout my career, I was just working. But when I retired, some people put it in my mind to consider this in a couple of years. And at the time, I wasn't ready to consider it. But about 6 months ago, when it came time to really think things through and make a decision whether I was going to file, I decided after being retired for about 1.5 years at that time that I would, I really had a desire to be involved, and that I really felt I had something left to give. With my history of community service, working for the county, being involved with county politics on that end, my history of officiating sports, I've been in all these communities in the Mid-Columbia region multiple times a year for 30 plus years. I've developed a lot of friendships, met a lot of people who I'd be proud to serve as a county commissioner. And so I think all of those things combined kind of give me a unique perspective, having been an employee, but also working with those people in those other realms of my life.
The reason I'm running for Wasco County Commissioner is I grew up here, and I chose to come back here and raise my family. But my family, I have 2 children. One of them has already moved away to find work, and the other one is struggling to find meaningful work here as well. And I want my children and grandchildren to be able to remain here. I also want the entire county to be able to grow but yet remain its own unique self. As someone who grew up here, I understand what the past was like, but I also know what the future is like and what other entities have been doing around the country and around the state, and I can bring some of those ideas back. And I've been spending quite a few years, actually, since pretty much my entire adult life, preparing for this, learning how to learn, learning how to make tough decisions, learning to be the one to stand up. If you see me on city council, you know that I do stand up for things that I believe in. You know that sometimes I'm the first person to speak up when I see something going wrong. And I believe that I am the best candidate because I have the most experience in politics, but also in life. I have experience with the mental health, which is the issue right now. I also have experience with early childhood and childcare, which is an issue for us right now. And also with our housing, because I've been working on that. And as the chair of the Urban Renewal Agency, we have focused the last 2 years on housing for downtown. And I've been studying these things on our own. And when the pandemic hit and the homeless people lost their warming shelter, I'm the one that figured out a way to create a warming shelter and then also leverage dollars and actually put something in permanently that we had for 5 months to get people all the way through the winter. And the only way that happened is I was the sole staff person, and I lived on site in my parents' fifth wheel for 5 months.
Why am I running? Well, I think I would do a good job. My skill set matches what I think we need, what I want to see in our next Wasco County Commissioner. And some of those things are an understanding of natural resources, an ability to listen to lots of different people with a great variety of backgrounds and yet still make tough decisions, an ability to navigate through some challenging issues. And though Wasco County is situated pretty well, we have a pretty financially healthy place, we do have some challenging issues ahead of us. Some of the IRF folks earlier in the evening talked about those at the state level, and we are not immune. So we have things like a lack of affordable housing throughout the county, every community. Similarly, every community around the county has very expensive water system upgrades or water supply issues. So we've got some challenges that we really need to navigate through. And I feel like I would do a really good job in being on that team or the group of commissioners doing that. And there's lots of ways to do that. There's people, I see here people tonight that drive meals to our elders, and I see others who are mentoring children, and I see some that are doing things that go unsung, boxing up food for the hungry in our community. Public service is a way to give back. It's a way that I have found to make a contribution to my city, and I serve my city. I would like to serve my whole county. So that's why I'm running for county commissioner.
Yeah, besides being encouraged by more than a handful of people to run for county commissioner, I think what encourages me is in the position is my background as well as a business owner, a successful business owner, and also just many of the community boards that I've sat on. It's trained me in a way for this position that I think will help benefit the future success of Wasco County. I like to consider myself as a problem solver, a good listener, and a good people person to be able to deal with people on a level where they're at. I'm ready to get to work alongside department directors and the great citizens of the great county. So.
The reason I'm running is I want people to be heard. I've experienced not being heard in this county. We need somebody in this seat to listen to the people. We have serious issues, wildland fire, infrastructure issues, housing. They need to be addressed, and we're not always listened to. And I felt that I needed to at least give this a shot because I wanted people to be heard. I want to be accessible. And again, I said, I'm nonpartisan. I don't think this is a party position. I think everybody should be listened to equally and treated equally in this.
All right, thank you. We'll get to the next question, and that is, now we've passed the easy ones, so here's one for you. Wasco County, as mentioned earlier, has an income advantage that other counties do not have, thanks to Google. When the first 15-year tax moratorium ran out last year, the county's share of the $5 million tax bill from Google was $1.1 million. And that's not one-time money. That's an income stream that will only get bigger as the other agreements mature. So instead of just dropping it into the general fund, what do you feel is the highest and best use of this unprecedented opportunity?
Well, I actually disagree with the premise of that question because we're talking about the tax dollars from Google. And I don't know how we would think that we would be just deciding by a particular taxpayer that we're going to use that money for something else. I believe that the money does go into the general fund. It's the SIP agreements and these other agreements that we have the money up front that are one-time sums that we use to invest in the community. However, I am not suggesting that we take this and increase our budget to that level, okay? I am saying that Google has come on now and that can cause relief for the rest of us in the county. But there are some things that we do need to pay for. We have a roads problem. We haven't been able to pay for our roads for a really long time. We finally have some tax dollars to do that. Let's invest in ourselves. We also know that Wasco County DA's office is going to need some additional funds. The city has been paying since we moved the municipal court over, but this is not something the city of the Dalles is required to do. And this is something that most other entities are not paying their counties to do. And so the city has decided or is in the process of rescinding that money. We need to backfill the budget. There's still work that needs to be done. We know we have a crime problem and that we know that we need to have the staff to take care of that. So I think that there are things that we need to fund. I still think that these are tax dollars. They go in the general fund. I actually think that is Oregon budget law, but you can't quote me on that. I'll have to talk to the treasurer. I just think those are two different things. And if I had more than a minute, I would talk to you about what we would do with the money that should be used for the best and highest purpose.
Thanks, Roger. That's a critical question for our community, for both city and county. What should we do with Google? What's the best, highest use? Well, first, probably, is to build some housing. This is number one. And it's not because I came into this race saying housing first and always. It's because in going around the county's various communities, every single community, every city council, people with perspective from Dufur, Maupin, Mosier, the Dalles, Tye Valley, even unincorporated places, all of them, everyone says we have a shortage of housing. And when we hear everybody in our community or communities across the county speak with one voice, I feel like we probably need to pay attention to that. It's a new thing for our county, but we can do that. We could build some amount of housing. Hood River's doing this as we speak. They are putting together about 140 unit complex with a variety of sizes of homes. I think we could do bigger. I think we could do a couple of hundred. Look, when we bought our house, my wife and I bought our house 21 years ago in the Dalles. Vacancy rates for houses were about 5%. That was the market vacancy. Now it's about 2.5%. There's a very real tightening. I'm sure Brian could speak more adeptly to this, but it's something we just need to start thinking about pretty seriously. That said, as Darcy noted, there's a lot of things to pay for. I'm not sure if there is a single highest and best use, but there's a single critical need with Google funds, and that's to have a clear, transparent process for allocating it. I don't support putting the stream of Google money into the general fund. I think that's a way that we would lose track of it over time and expand budgets without getting anything of durable and lasting good for ourselves. So finally, I think as a community, we need to have a pretty serious conversation about a new high school. This too is not a county responsibility, but it's something that affects all of us. And if we can find a way to use some of that Google money in a collaborative fashion between our local governments to offset the cost of a new high school, then it will keep our tax bill, our bond bill for that lower and more affordable for the rest of us. Thanks.
Yeah, so my understanding is that the initial money that's coming in off the first Google plan is coming into the general fund. But there's other monies, like Darcy mentioned earlier, the SIP money, the GAP money that is going to be a roundtable discussion of city, county, but also I think it's important to get the citizens' input on that as well. So so I would just, you know, if I were to be honest, my thought is infrastructure. Somebody said it earlier, infrastructure. You know, we have a lot of dilapidated infrastructure in Dalles that needs to be addressed, and in our county, not just the Dalles. And so that would be something, incentives for housing, maybe some incentives for business opportunities, and maybe some, you know, amenities for our children and young adults is a good place to put money too. So.
Thank you. My goal would be to put it into the infrastructure in our county. I travel a lot of the county. I see a lot of issues with the roads. More importantly is the water systems that the smaller communities have. Some of them are failing very badly. I understand that Shannico is without water now at this point in their system. Womack has issues constantly with broken pipes. I mean, it's a very old system. We need to shore up the smaller communities. I'm sure that we need to have money here in the Dalles too, but we're responsible for the whole county. And it needs to be spread evenly. And thank you.
I think I believe in investing in the long-term financial health of the county. When I first started working at Norcor, there was some money coming in on some contracts, and the administrator at the time talked about putting that money away to kind of offset those really volatile budget years. And after about a year and a half of that, it suddenly was a volatile year, and the board voted to use the money that was gone, and it never did start again. And so I think we need to really resist this temptation to spend it all too quickly, and then look at investing in the long term. Then when the time's right, utilize community meetings, get community input on the best way to utilize that, but have it be something that 20 and 40 and 60 years from now, people are saying, we're still seeing a return on that. We didn't just spend it all right away.
Okay, and pass that down then. And finally, as a candidate for Wasco County Commission, what specific initiatives do you plan to introduce?
Well, thank you, Roger. I have three that leap to mind, and that is housing, water systems, and fire districts. Again, going around the county, a series of conversations with people in various communities, thinking that the various communities in Wasco County would have needs that were as diverse as they are. It turns out there's some pretty universal themes, whether you're talking Moser or Maupin or Duffer or Shannico. And those three that we keep saying are lack of housing, which is both obviously just a need for, a basic need to live your life, but it's also an economic limitation, it limits our economic development. A need for water systems, improvements and upgrades. A community with 300 families finds it a pretty heavy lift if it's a $10 million project, and there's several of those. This is not traditionally a county area of work. Usually it's left to the individual communities, but I do think that given the universality and the cost of it, we need to be thinking about how county comes to the table. I have a few thoughts about that. And then third is fire districts, much the same. We're very fortunate in the Dalles that if we have a medical call or a fire or any other emergency, we have professionals and they are on the spot really fast. Out in most of the county, if you get in a car accident down on 197, or you have a fire or a wildfire, it's volunteers. It's the 4 guys and gals from the local fire district, if they're around. They're having a harder time funding the equipment and the training they need and finding volunteers. Again, traditionally not a responsibility of the county, but given the critical need and the wide demand for that, I think the county needs to be involved. 2 others briefly. The county is doing a good job pushing forward on wildfire mitigation. I can talk to you about that some more, but they're doing well. I would, if elected, continue an emphasis on that. And lastly, the county has also done some work and trying to move forward on expanding behavioral health capacity. So of course that's both addictions and mental health, and I would strongly support that. Thanks.
All right, and again, I would go back to infrastructure just as somebody who deals with a lot of real estate in our area. There's just a lot of it as we're seeing failing things in our street, our sewers, our water, things that need to be replaced. And I think Dan mentioned towns that just don't have the good water or don't have water at all. And so, I think infrastructure, going back to that, is important. I think housing is an issue. I don't, even though I work in it, I don't really have that answer for that. I know interest rates are terrible right now, not allowing the first-time home buyers to buy, but I don't know what we could do about that other than try to create some more affordable housing in our area. And I don't necessarily agree on going out into the rural county small towns with that. I think we need to maybe focus on the Dalles for affordable housing. Also, just talking to different parts of our county, property rights, private property rights is a big issue out there, and what they can do with the property without being weighed down by county laws or rules, or what they can do with their property. So I just want to be a good ear to that as well as we go forward to know what we can do to encourage and help them understand what is in place and what maybe we can do for them.
You guys are getting really good about passing that microphone.
I'm going to sound like a broken record. Infrastructure, housing, and mental health. They're the crucial things. We have so many issues that we do need to address. We have wildfire issues, I-5 wildfires, and that concerns the whole county. You've seen it. Everybody here's seen it. A lot of us have dealt with it. Again, the infrastructure, our water and our roads need so much help. And it's not just in the county, it's in the city here too. The mental health issue, I don't have a fix for it. I think that we need to spend more time looking into public health for it. At one time, we had a hospital. I mean, it wasn't the best, and they closed it, but we had a hospital, mental health hospital. And is all we have now is Oregon State Hospital. I'm pretty sure that's all that is left. We need to expand it. We have a lot of issues with it. Thank you.
I think one of the things that I'd like to do is there's already a lot of work being done. If you look at the Wasco County Economic Development Commission's Strategic Action Plan for 22 through 27, there's some things that they prioritized. A lot of those do have to do with infrastructure and a lot in the small communities. I think we need to definitely make sure that those things are prioritized. Everybody's talked about affordable housing. I agree with that and echo that, so won't go into that for any longer. But the one specific thing that I'd really like to look at is the Resolution Center, short-term residential facility for people experiencing behavioral health needs and issues. I was on the local public safety coordinating council when Sheriff McGill brought that forward in 2019. He's worked so tirelessly on that. And as have a lot of people, don't get me wrong, there's been a lot of people working on it. They're just so close to realizing that, and I'd really like to see that come to fruition. Hopefully, before whoever's elected takes their seat in January, it'll be done, but if not, that would be a priority of mine, is to continue that work.
Well, it's interesting that you brought up the plan, because as I was sitting here, I was thinking that we often spend a lot of money and time and energy creating these plans, and then they can potentially be just a document on the shelf. And Wasco County has these plans created, and as a new commissioner, I would want to be looking toward that roadmap for ways that we could get started and things we can work on. But I'd also be wanting to talk with the public directly and get the input for the projects that they feel are not in that plan or not being addressed, or things that have come up since that's happened. And just like I have at the city council, I have open door policy. My phone number is published, my email is available, and I'm more than happy to drive to anywhere in the county, as I'm sure any of the other candidates up here are. We do have great ways since the pandemic to get involved. You can watch all of the videos online, even if you can't be there in person. You can always send emails, you can send contact with all of your commissioners so that they can get your feedback. And one request that I would have is that you please do that before we vote instead of after. And so just in order to, just want to wrap it up by saying, in order to get people involved, it's just a reminder and constantly reminding people that they can approach us. So many times, I'm sure Dan Richardson's experiences too, people call me and they say, I know you're busy, I'm so sorry to bother you, and I'm thinking, woohoo, you're the first person to call me. So just making sure that people know we're open to hearing from you, and encouraging people to go ahead and reach out to us and not be intimidated to come and speak before a county commission meeting. Because I know that public speaking can be very frightening to people. I've forgotten because I do it so much, but there's got to be a way that people can come and talk to us without being intimidated.
All right, thank you guys very, very much. Well done, all of you. And up next, it is District Attorney. Go a little quicker with just the two of you. All right. All right, we'll start the same way. We'll start with the introduction, and you can start and pass it on. Not yet.
Is that on?
Yeah.
Okay, my name's Travis Marston. I'm running for district attorney. I'm from Ashwood, Oregon, down here south of South County. I've been there since long before Wasco County was all Wasco County at one time. I think anybody that grew up in agriculture or on a ranch probably realizes that talking about yourself is not a very tasteful thing to do, so it's very difficult for me to try to talk about myself, so I'm just going to try to give a little overview of where I'm from. So Ashwood is where I'm from. And I went to high school in Culver, and that was back when Wetumpka was in the same league. So I was familiar with the Dalles, and they had the meanest fans. I do remember that. But after high school, then I went to the University of Oregon. I graduated from there and then went to law school. And then I had the opportunity to go down to New Mexico and work in the district attorney's office down there. And so we were about 2 hours north of Ciudad Juarez and El Paso. So we had some of that bleed over into our area. There were 3 casinos and a racetrack, horse racing track. And so we had quite a bit of crime. And so I did a lot of prosecutions. We did a ton of trials. That was the focus of the DA's office at that time there was mostly on trial practice. And so that's my favorite thing to do as trials, because you have the immediate feedback whether you overcharged or not, because you have the community immediately tell you that you messed up, which I think is nice. So that kind of, you get a read on the community. Besides that, my dad died a few years ago, so I came back to Oregon, and with that, it was during COVID, so everything was kind of online anyway. So that was kind of a blessing in a way that we were able to continue to practice. And I was there on the ranch. What I'd say about myself is that I am community-minded. I care about this community. The Dalles has always been special to me because this was our hub, schools and everything. Money's never been my motivation. I think community is the motivation. If you go through school, you should be serving the community, I think. I never took any contracts, which I would have made a lot more money if I did, whether it was family division or public defender's contract or something like that. But I just tried to keep it simple and believe what I said. You hear a lot of people get into these rote repetitions when you're in court, and I like people to believe what I'm saying. So anyway, probably enough of an intro for me, and I would appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. You guys don't know how hard it is for us to sit here and talk to you. We're used to being told to stand when we're talking to people, so this is going against our grain, for sure. My name is Kara Davis. I'm running for Wasco County District Attorney, as you've just heard. I am currently the elected District Attorney of Gillum County. I am also a special Deputy District Attorney for Wasco County. I prosecute all of your child abuse, sex abuse, and elder abuse cases over here in this county. That is because when I was elected Gillum County DA, there was no one to fill my role, so I'm pulling double duty. I grew up here in the Dalles. I'm from the Dalles. I'm 4th generation Wasco County. I grew up in a cherry orchard. Actually went to high school with 2 of your county commissioner candidates. When I was in the Dalles High School was when I did my very first ever law job. I was working at a local criminal law firm as part of the mentorship program through the TAG program at the Dalles High. After I graduated, I went to school in London for a bit, and then I transferred to University of Massachusetts. I graduated there with a degree in poli-sci psych. I graduated with honors. I worked in New Zealand and Ireland for a while, and I did nothing worthwhile to tell you about while I was there. But then I went to law school. I took an academic scholarship at University of Miami in Florida. Go Canes for football fans out there. I graduated magna cum laude, Order of the Coif, which is the top 10% of my class. When I left law school, I originally worked in Washington, D.C. as a legislative attorney for HUD. When I was at HUD, I was drafting legislation on I did a $250 million homelessness bill. I worked on mortgage products, Fair Housing Act legislation, but I wanted to come home. So I came back to Oregon, and specifically the Dalles. I have been working in criminal law in Oregon ever since. It's been 21 years now. I became a member of the Oregon State Bar in 2003. I have 21 years experience doing criminal law, all in the state of Oregon. All of it, I think the farthest west I've ever come is Wasco County, and all the way to the Idaho border. So if you go down the I-84 corridor, I've appeared in every single circuit court from here to Malheur County working on criminal cases. I have a lot of background in volunteerism and working for the Bar Association, working for different community entities. So for instance, in Umatilla County, I was the chair of the Umatilla County Library Board. The Library Board in Umatilla County has about a $2 million a year budget that we had to manage. I was the assistant director at the Public Defender's Office in Pendleton. I managed 10 other attorneys, and we had a $1.8 million a year budget that I had to manage. as well as all the training and supervision and my own caseload, which at the time was mostly murder and included sex crimes, mental health issues, and I even did death penalty. So I have a varied background. I've worked a long time in the state of Oregon, and I have a lot of experience. So I'm running for Wasco County District Attorney. Thank you.
All right, and question number 2 is, we've asked everybody, why are you running for office? Oh, no, you have to pass the microphone. Be quiet. Sorry about that. That was very educational answer.
No, that was a good answer. I think it has the potential to handicap law enforcement and judges. I mean, it does have that. So to be creative about it, that's I think what she's getting after, is that you have to know the rules to be able to charge. It also goes back to charging discretion. So if you have the right charge, you have to be creative about how you're going to do it. I don't disagree with what she said about that.
Okay, well, then you get to start this one, which was about plea bargaining. And can you give the plan on plea bargaining? When should you use it? When should you not use it?
I think that I won't be very popular with the judges probably, but I'm a big fan of trials. I think that most things should go through the community. So I know that can bog down the system, and the pleas are obviously a huge part. Right? Most things are resolved by a plea, and that also makes the DA one of the most powerful people in the courtroom, because they handle more cases than the judge does, in reality. And so having the right charge to begin with is important. That's why I also like the balance with trials. Kind of like what I was saying before, is if you bring something in front of a jury and it falls flat because you overcharge it, you got immediate feedback that you probably shouldn't have done that. And because as a DA, you really shouldn't lose, because you should know what your evidence is going to be. Yeah, you have witnesses not show up, and law enforcement retire or something like that. So that does happen. And so you do sometimes end up with unexpected holes in your case, or somebody gets some evidence suppressed at the beginning of it, and so it can fall apart. But for the most part, you can be really prepared about what you're going into, I think. And so if you're doing it correctly, I don't think you should fear the defense bar by any means. I think that you should be able to stand up there and say, no, we're going to win this case. And then with that, then people are more likely to plead. But I think that you have to kind of put a strong foot forward to say that, no, we're going to go to trial. We're not afraid to go to trial. And I think that kind of sets a precedent.
We have in Wasco County, I think we charged over 1,000 cases last year. We have 2 courtrooms. We have 2 courtrooms. We cannot take every case to trial. We would start having to dismiss cases for lack of speedy trial. It is a fact that over 95% of all cases in the United States of America nationwide resolve via a plea bargain. So it is maybe a necessary evil, because I agreed with a lot of what Mr. Marston said right there. But it is a necessary part of our criminal system. When I do a plea offer, I always talk to the victims first. I utilize the victims in my discussions with the victims to form a plea offer. I run that plea offer past the victim before I ever even send it to the defense. So when I first got back here, when I first moved back here, I feel like some of the defensive attorneys did test me. We did have some gnarly knockdown, drag out trials. And then after I kept winning, they started taking the plea offers. So my plea offers are fair. I will never make a plea offer so low just so I can avoid trial. That will not happen. If it's not accountable enough, if it doesn't meet the standards of what my victim needs, then we'll just take it to trial. On the other hand, I am not going to traumatize my victims who've already been through something very traumatic in the first place in order to take it to trial and show how tough I am. If it's going to mentally hurt or cause problems for my victim, I'm not going to force a trial on that person to make a point. I will, however, settle it or get a conviction or find some way to do it.
Okay, this is kind of the tricky one. To ensure clarity and address any public concerns, could each of you please share your understanding of the eligibility requirements for the district attorney, so will help inform voters and dispel rumors or misunderstandings?
Sure. I get to go first on this one, huh? So it should surprise no one that statutes written by lawyers sometimes lack clarity. But obviously, if you want to be elected as an attorney in the state of Oregon, you must be an attorney in the state of Oregon. There is a 2001 Attorney General's opinion. There is an Oregon Supreme Court case involving a Mr. Eric Nisley, who some of you may know, that touches on the issue. And there is the statute. And the Secretary of State has already spoken to the press. She's spoken to me via email. She has spoken to other people. She will respond to your requests. The opinion that is not in question is that on the day of election, which is May 21st, you must be an attorney in the state of Oregon. That's been the Attorney General opinion for over 2 decades now. So this isn't new law. It's most often come up when somebody has been suspended or retired and they're reactivating their license. So yeah, you do have to be an active member of the Oregon State Bar to be elected to a law position in Oregon.
Yeah, I think so. I think the elephant in the room is whether I'm licensed or not. I'm operating under a temporary license under an attorney here in Oregon. That's fine. But I would still say if they have a sheriff's election, that there's only one person, they're not even going to run a primary. The real election's in November, but that's not really the point. The point is, like, so you have to go through the steps. People have been saying I've been sneaky about it or whatever. I haven't been able to explain it very well. So you have to go through the National Conference of Bar Examiners first. They do their background check, and then you get to the bar. And then they refer it to whatever bar, the state that you're in, and then the state bar refers it to the Supreme Court, whatever state you're in. So you got 3 different layers and 3 different agencies. So where we're at on mine, since we've been working on this since October, it takes a long time to get through all this. So, but for right now, I was on the agenda last Tuesday of the Supreme Court. The bar has already referred it to the Supreme Court, and it's supposed to be released on the 2nd. So 2 days. So I wish this thing was next week. You know, but the reality is that there's 2 different cycles for them to issue the license, and the first one's the 2nd, so I anticipate getting it on, what is that, Thursday? So that's really the issue, but even without that, I still think it's November, but that I don't think it's going to be an issue anyway. If I did, I wouldn't be running. So, thank you.
All right, thank you both, I appreciate it. And I think we all learned some stuff today about some things, so appreciate that. We have our volunteers who are reading the parts. This time we actually have a gender-appropriate person to read the women's part.
I actually wanted to stand, is that okay?
If you want to stand, just take the microphone with you.
I'll consider the sheriff.
Yeah. Well, let's pass the microphone down to you so you can start, because you're the one that's in the room, and introduce yourself.
Hi, good afternoon. I want to thank everybody for coming, and especially the organizers. I know there's a lot of time and effort and energy that goes into these kind of things, and that is greatly appreciated because we have a vested interest in our state and our nation. My name is Michael Cross. I'm running to be your next state attorney general. I've got over 40 years of management and executive level business management and ownership experience. I did, at 11 years old, I was doing door-to-door sales, and at the age of 12, I had my first checking account, which I don't know if they'd allow that anymore. The point is, I know how to solve problems, and Oregon, I'm sure you'll agree, has got a myriad of problems, and I'm a problem solver. This is the second time I've ran. The last time, which is in 2020, I got almost 1 million votes with only $11,000 in the campaign fund, which was very good, being the first state-run office. Thank you.
All right. And we'll pass it down to whoever's going to do Dan Rayfield.
Okay, this is Dan Rayfield's answer. Oregon currently faces a unique set of challenges, from our addiction and substance abuse problem to the struggles we're seeing with housing affordability in every community. At the same time, our state also has opportunities right now to better help struggling Oregonians, to help make sure that everyone has the same opportunities in life. I am running for Attorney General because I believe with the right leadership, the Department of Justice can be an indispensable partner to help fix these ideas and help make Oregon the best places to work, live, and raise a family. In the private sector, I have nearly 18 years of experience as a practicing attorney in Oregon, focusing on general civil litigation, civil rights, consumer protection, and representing people with claims against the insurance industry and large corporations. I also bring my reputation and experience as a legislator and the Speaker of the Oregon House. In this role, I work tediously to earn a reputation built on trust, strong relationships, and collaboration while managing a branch of government with a budget of more than $400 million and 400 employees. During my tenure as Speaker, we passed the largest housing reforms and investments the state has seen, one of the most significant economic development packages in recent history, established the first ever climate budget and water infrastructure package, passed the strongest reproductive health care and abortion protections in the country, and somehow managed to fit it in time to pass significant ethics and good government reforms. As Oregon's next Attorney General, I want to build on this work, expand the work we do on behalf of vulnerable Oregonians and consumers, protect our environment and values from national attacks, and work collaboratively with law enforcement and criminal justice reform advocates to keep our communities safe. Thank you for the opportunity to share some information with you today, and I look forward to meeting with you all in the near future.
All right, and you're representing Will Lathrop.
So speaking for Will Lathrop, I was born and raised in Joseph, Oregon. My father is a cattle rancher and my mother is a retired school teacher. I came to the Willamette Valley to go to law school at Willamette University. I started my legal career as a deputy district attorney, specializing in prosecuting child sex abuse cases. While my focus was on protecting children, I also prosecuted cases of adult sexual assault, domestic violence, homicide, drug trafficking, and human trafficking. After almost a decade, I was recruited away to the national level in Washington, D.C. to work on victim protection at the National District Attorneys Association. Shortly thereafter, I assumed a leadership position with a global human rights organization that specializes in human trafficking. I was asked to lead large multinational teams in Africa, both northern Uganda and Ghana, to combat violence against the poor. In Uganda, I worked with the government to prevent land violence against widows and orphans. In Ghana, I worked in conjunction with the U.S. State Department, UNICEF, and the Ghanaian government to rescue child trafficking victims and prosecute the traffickers. We also worked to rescue women who had been trafficked to Middle Eastern countries for labor or forced sex.
Okay. And Shania Pomerantz?
Actually, I'm speaking for, and it's actually Shayna. And so my name is Shayna Maxey Pomerantz, and I'm asking for your vote to be Oregon's next Attorney General. My journey to this pivotal moment in our state's history is rooted in the rich tapestry of my family's story. As a third-generation Oregonian, I carry with me the legacy of resilience and determination instilled by my grandparents, who sought refuge from oppressive laws to build a better life in Oregon. Their unwavering commitment to education, community service, and inclusivity laid the foundation for my passion for advocacy and bridge building.
Okay, and we'll start this one. Why are you running with Rayfield?
I am running for Attorney General because I believe with the right leadership, the Attorney General can be the attorney for all Oregonians. Whether they are seniors being impacted by fly-at-night scams in our communities to students being taken advantage of by predator lenders, the Attorney General can also be an indispensable partner to tackle our community's greatest challenges and help make them safer. Within that framework, there are three overarching goals that will focus our work. First, we will partner with law enforcement and criminal justice reform advocates to improve safety in keep our community safe, reduce gun violence, and help those with substance abuse disorder to get the treatment they need to get back on the path to recovery. The second focus will be to expand the work of the Civil Enforcement Division to further help, support, and protect our seniors, kids, and vulnerable Oregonians. People need a reliable place to turn when they have impacted bad actors. Specifically, I would like to create a working families unit to tackle issues such as wage theft and child labor violations. Finally, we will work to protect Oregonians' values and the values that reflect those values, the laws that reflect those values from national threats.
Will Lathrop here. It's no secret that Oregon has a crime problem and people across the state don't feel safe. I am a dedicated public servant, experienced prosecutor, and victims advocate. For the past 20 years, I've devoted my career to protecting the world's most vulnerable populations from violence, exploitation, and abuse. It's been painful for me to watch the state that I love suffer. Over the past decade, Oregon's politicians have systematically dismantled our criminal justice system and have failed to keep our communities safe. Oregon is a wounded beauty, a beautiful state marred by crime and addiction. I represent a dawn of new leadership focused on protecting people and solving problems, not radical partisan politics.
Yep.
Okay, for Shayna. My vision for the Oregon Department of Justice involves significant changes to enhance civil rights protections and combat systemic injustices affecting marginalized communities. I'm staunchly committed to championing transparency, accountability, and integrity within our legal system. By upholding these values, we can instill public trust and confidence in the fairness and efficiency of our judiciary. First and foremost, I am committed to enhancing support systems for victims of crime and survivors of injustice. By providing comprehensive assistance and resources, we can empower individuals to navigate the path to healing and justice. Additionally, I am resolute in my determination to implement comprehensive reforms to combat systemic racism and discrimination. This requires a multifaceted approach that addresses root causes and systemic injustices across all sectors of society. Furthermore, I'm committed to collaborating closely with the law enforcement to promote community-centered policy practices by fostering trust and cooperation between law enforcement agencies and the communities they serve. We can enhance public safety and strengthen community relations. Moreover, I'm dedicated to expanding access to affordable legal services and resources for underserved populations. Access to justice should not be contingent on one's financial needs. And I will work tirelessly to ensure that all Oregonians have access to the legal support they need.
Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. They actually mean something. They're not just words on a piece of paper, at least to me. Now, my opponents that are running, this position is in the executive branch of government, no doubt. But my opponents believe that they represent the governor. And while that's true to an extent, the outgoing Attorney General admitted that she works for the governor. That's her view, right? But when was the last time you ever heard of an elected person that works for another elected person? That just doesn't make any sense. So the Attorney General, while they prosecute and defend states on behalf of the state, what is the state? Is it you, or is it the executive branch of government? It's you. So the Attorney General needs to represent the people, and I'm going to have an open door policy to solve the problems that Oregon needs to solve, because I love Oregon and I detest what it's becoming. The fentanyl crisis, the drug crisis, the homeless crisis, all of this mess, organized crime, and I will start a special task force to go after organized crime. I actually have a solution for the homeless crisis. And it's very similar to the CCC program about 80 years ago. You may have heard about it or remember that, the CCC program. The only difference is this involves private industry. It's a public-private partnership. And our website is michaelcross4oregon.com. That's michaelcross4oregon.com. And Palestinians are going to soon, I don't know if you heard on the news today, Palestinians are going to be allowed to come into this country on a refugee status by our current president. Now, we cannot control what DC does or doesn't do, but we as Oregonians can stand up and protect our own state. I've spoken with county sheriffs. Why don't you deputize people more often? They're concerned about the liability of that. So I agree, that needs to be a fallback. I think that we're headed for some very trying times, and I'm willing to meet that challenge. I served honorably in the military, and I know how to solve problems. Thank you.
Okay. And this question, we'll start with Mr. Lathrop, but this is the final question that we have. It is, given the diverse needs of Oregon's population, from urban centers to rural areas like Wasco County, how do you plan to ensure that the legal needs and rights of all Oregonians are effectively represented and protected? Specifically, can you discuss any initiatives or policies you would prioritize to address issues unique to rural communities, such as land use, water rights, and agricultural regulation?
Growing up in Eastern Oregon in a generational agriculture family, I understand what it is like to be invisible to the politicians in Salem. I have seen firsthand how extreme policy decisions are made at the state and federal level without adequate input from rural communities, and with no concern for the economic devastation caused to those communities by the radical policies. The Attorney General's office plays a big role in making sure that Oregon's state agencies follow the law and follow due process. For the last decade, we have seen runaway bureaucracy in Oregon, and it is crushing business across the state, particularly agriculture. When elected, I plan to root out activists and ensure that the state agencies follow the law.
Recognizing the diversity of Oregon's population, I am committed to adopting strategies that cater to the specific needs of rural communities. This includes actively engaging with local stakeholders, elected officials, and community advocates to understand the intricacies of the legal challenges they face. One key initiative I will prioritize is the establishment of outreach programs and legal assistance services tailored specifically for rural areas. By providing accessible legal resources and support, we can ensure that individuals and businesses in rural communities have the guidance they need to navigate complex legal issues related to land use, water rights, and agriculture regulations. Furthermore, I will work to strengthen collaboration between state agencies, local law enforcement, and community-based organizations to address legal concerns effectively. This collaborative approach will enable us to develop targeted solutions that are responsible to the unique needs of rural communities. In addition, I'm committed to advocating for policies that promote sustainable land management practices and protect natural resources. This includes supporting initiatives to protect clean water resources, preserve agricultural land, and mitigate the impact of development on rural landscapes. Moreover, I will work with the governor and legislator to prioritize efforts to streamline regulatory process and reduce bureaucratic barriers that may hinder desirable economic development in rural areas. By fostering a consumer-friendly environment while safeguarding the interest of local communities, we can promote sustainable growth and prosperity in rural Oregon. Ultimately, my goal is to ensure that all Oregonians, regardless of their location, have equal access to legal representation and protection of their rights. By prioritizing unique needs of rural communities and adopting a collaborative and people-centered approach, I am confident that we can effectively address legal challenges and promote the well-being of all Oregonians. Thank you for your time and consideration this evening. Please vote for Shana Maxey Pomerantz for Oregon's Attorney General.
Mr. Cross.
You know, with what's going on, how all these people are being allowed into our country, I believe that what's being set up, I hope I'm wrong, is another 9/11 event. And we need to be able to, as a people, meet this threat head on. And I am that candidate, better than in my opinion, anyone else running for current office, because I'm willing to think outside the box and solve the problem. And what's important to me is that we're safe. We're safe in our homes, we're safe in our schools, we're safe in our workplaces. We should be safe if we want to take a walk to the park at midnight, okay? And I will empower local law enforcement with the tools that they need, whether it be human trafficking, fentanyl, or this illegal people being in our country, whatever it is, okay? But these kinds of things are what it takes. And as far as the absences with the legislators being not allowed to run again, as Attorney General, I would stop that. And the Attorney General can stop things if it's a violation of the Constitution. And I believe it's a violation of the First Amendment, freedom of speech. I think that if those people want to leave the building in order to stop certain laws from passing that they don't feel inclined that should pass, that's an issue between them and their constituents. The government should not be stepping in and slapping their hand and saying they can't run again. In my mind, that's wrong. We need to get, and the reason we're in this mess is because we've deviated from the Constitution, and the people in the marble nut house have forgotten who they really work for. It seems like I see multiple attacks on several fronts to our way of life, whether it's farming, ranching, logging, fishing, homeschooling, or being a Christian. And I will step up and protect those rights because I am a Christian. And I don't like what's going on. And it just sickens me. And the only reason I'm running, trust me, I'd rather, be out enjoying the weather, what have you, because I'm busy enough anyway. But I felt like there was no one else stepping up in this role that I felt qualified to make these hard choices and these decisions in order to save our beautiful state. And we have land under mismanagement by the federal government. These are our resources. The federal government manages roughly 50% of our state. And I think if they're going to manage it, then they better properly manage it because those resources belong to us as Oregonians. And I detest the fact when logs are laying on the forest floor and allowed to rot, okay? So that could be revenue for our state to fund things that we need. Thank you. Again, it's michaelcross4oregon.com. Thank you.
All right, one more, and we'll have Mr. Rayfield.
Throughout my time in the legislature, I took intentional actions to develop trust and strong relationship with stakeholders and legislators on all sides of issues. This is reflected in the significant bipartisan work that was passed under my leadership as Speaker of the House during the last 2 years. During my tenure as Speaker, we emphasized that one approach to an issue that works in one area of the state may not work in another. In fact, that same idea can sometimes make things worse. Our approach was to listen, bring all people to the table, and allow those at the table to have meaningful input into the final product. An example of this approach was illustrated in the 2022 legislative session where we passed the first ever $100 million rural economic development package. This package was a result of bipartisan work to attack a significant need in our state. We then built off this work during the 23 legislative session with a $250 million Oregon CHIPS Act and revenue reforms that have spurred jobs in every corner of the state. Finally, this same approach was instrumental in the 2023 water infrastructure package that will be instrumental in drawing down millions of federal dollars for water projects across this state. As a legislature, I have a proven track record of bringing people together, solve complex problems in every corner of the state. As Oregon's next Attorney General, I will seek to continue this approach to address the needs of all Oregon's diverse communities.
Okay, we have one more set of things to read. And I want to thank you for coming out for this tonight. We have, go ahead, give them a round of applause. 4 of the 8 candidates for the Secretary of State submit answers to our questions, and we told them that the cutoff point was we had to have half. So we have half, and because of that, we'll read those, and we'll have to figure out who gets to be who. I think we'll just start at the top. You're Paul Wells, and you're Tobias Reed, and you're James Manning, and I will be Brent Barker. This will be a round robin here, and we'll just start with you.
This is Secretary of State.
Secretary of State for the state of Oregon.
I'm speaking for Paul Wells. I'm a longtime independent voting rights advocate from Corvallis. Every 4 years since 1996, I run as a candidate for Secretary of State to press for free and fair elections. I've run once as a candidate of the Independent Party in 2016 and twice as a Republican in 96 and 2000. I believe this is the 4th time I run as a Democrat candidate for Secretary of State.
Reading for Tobias Reed. I'm a father, a husband, and a person who really thinks about the long-run future of Oregon. I've had the opportunity to work in public service in the state for a number of years. First as a state legislator and now as state treasurer. The North Star for my entire career has been thinking about how to make a difference in the lives of everyday people. In Oregon, we too often miss the mark when we try to translate our ideals into action. I'm proud of the track record I have as the head of a state agency in translating complicated policy into results that people can feel in their daily lives. And I hope to bring that experience to the office of Secretary of State.
I'll be reading for James Manning. Oregon needs a public servant to restore trust and integrity in our Secretary of State's office. I am that person. When I was in the 5th grade, I had my first public service experience as a crossing guard at my school. Ever since, I have strived to protect and serve those around me. I've protected members of my community during my career in law enforcement. I defended and represented our nation with trustworthiness and integrity for 24 years in the United States Army. I represent my community with trust and integrity in the Oregon State Senate. Now I strive to protect access to democracy and ensure the integrity of our elections. For 2 terms in the Oregon State Senate, I have demonstrated a strong record of advancing legislation that bolsters economic activity, fundamentally protects water rights, and ensures equitable access to health care, education, and the ballot box. As such, I am endorsed by more than 20 current and former serving legislators, including Congressman Peter DeFazio, Senate President Rob Wagner, Senator Jeff Golden, as well as Vote Vets, AFSCME, and Invisible Bend.
Interestingly enough, Brent Barker writes about Brent Barker in the 3rd person. Born in Iowa, Brent Barker went to grade school at Raleigh Hills and is a graduate of Aloha High School. Received his Bachelor of Science degree and Master's degree at California State University and Pepperdine University School of Business for Capital Markets. He's been a nationally accredited clinical exercise psychologist, that's certainly physiologist, my apologies, and athletic trainer for individuals and professional teams to become a television spokesperson. He became an athletic club owner and developer, Athletic Club of Bend, a dozen facilities sold to LA Fitness. Now he is a small business owner and commercial investment principal broker in Oregon, Washington, and Arizona. Member of the Multnomah Bar Association, the Oregon Mediation Association, and Southern California Mediation Association. He's a member of the Multnomah Athletic Club, Heritage Foundation, and the Entrepreneur Organization. He has also served in the U.S. Asia Expo Ambassador, received a Commendation Award for Public Service from Los Angeles County. Is a precinct committee person and was a White House vetted 2020 Oregon delegate. Worked for the White House, Executive Office of the President, Office of Advance. Was a 2022 candidate for the Oregon Commissioner of Labor and Industries, BOLI. Graduate education continues at Pepperdine University Caruso School of Law, Dispute Resolution. Brent Barker for Oregon, P.O. Box 608, Beaverton, Oregon 97075, and 503-308-0772. info@brentbarkerfororegon.org. Paid for by Brent Barker for Oregon. He copied his ad. Okay. All right, next question is, why are you running for this position? And we'll start with Tobias Reed.
I'm running because our democracy is fragile and under pressure, and we have to do everything we can to protect elections in Oregon. We're lucky to have so many advantages. The mail-in system that we pioneered in Oregon is effective, efficient, popular, secure, and accessible. But we would make a big mistake in thinking that it's inevitable or that it is invulnerable to attack. We have to protect it. The Secretary of State also has the responsibility of making sure that tax dollars are spent efficiently and effectively. In my experience as treasurer has prepared me well because of what we've done. Putting Oregon on a path toward a stronger financial future, helping people save for college and retirement, reuniting people with their unclaimed property in a faster and more efficient way. That record of turning concepts into results is really good preparation for this role. That's reflected in the support our campaign has earned from the former Secretaries of State, from former governors, from members of Congress, to elected leaders from across the state. And it's a big part of why I'm so excited to get to work.
James Manning. I am a public servant running to restore trust and integrity in the office of Secretary of State. I will defend our democracy, preserve vote by mail, and ensure our elections workers are protected and Oregon's data is secure. As our democratic institutions and election systems are under attack by enemies, foreign and domestic, I will invest in the vital data security measures to defend our democracy, protecting personal information, and ensuring the safety of election workers, staff, volunteers, and voters. As I have in the U.S. Army of the Assistant Inspector General, I will use the power of the audit to provide a transparent accounting of our departments, divisions, agencies, state-run programs. In fact, I'm the only candidate in this race with experience conducting thorough audits, as that was my role in the Office of the Assistant Inspector General. The power of the audit is vital to restoring trust, transparency, and accountability to the Office of Secretary of State. As a member of the State Land Board, Oregonians can count on me to ensure our public lands, waterways, and state forests are not for sale. That's why I have earned the exclusive endorsements of Congressman Peter DeFazio, the Sierra Club, and 350 Salem, Oregon. My commitment to preserving our precious natural resources for future generations is unwavering. I will preserve and protect our precious natural resources for future generations. Under my watch, our public lands, waterways, and state forests are not for sale.
Brett Barker. We've all watched the decay, litter, disregard for private and public property over the past 20 years in our beautiful state. I believe a person is prepared for public service when their education and experience are commensurate with the opportunity sought. I've traveled much of the world and was able to experience countless U.S. cities during my tenure in the White House EOP Office of Advance, nonpartisan role. We would arrive 1 week prior to the arrival of the president and collaborate with security, private and public agencies to achieve weekly mission statements. In business, we constantly inspect what we expect. This includes verification of documents, negotiations, and making ends meet. I've enjoyed my visits to Washington, D.C., meeting various ambassadors on Embassy Row. First thing everyone learns is everyone's opinion has value, and the more solution-based, respectful, and kind-spirited the dialogue, the better.
Paul Wells writes, I use the voters pamphlet to educate voters and recruit supporters. In the 2016 general election, my supporters chose not to vote for the Democratic Secretary of State candidate, resulting in the loss of the office to the Republicans. I am back now that COVID is over, and I expect to gain more supporters with each passing election cycle. I am hoping that my supporters will continue to reject any Democratic candidate that does not actively support free and fair elections.
Okay, the next question. Do you believe that elections in Oregon are free and equal as mandated by the Oregon Constitution? If not, what can the Secretary of State do to correct this?
At first, right? Mr. James Manning. Yes, Oregon boasts the highest voter turnout in the nation, largely thanks to the vote by mail, automatic voter registration through motor voter, paid postage, a bill I introduced in the Oregon legislature, and ballots mailed on election day to be fully counted. However, We must navigate the federal hurdles in regard to implementation of AVR through the Oregon Health Plan, and we should aim towards maximum automatic voter registration through Oregon's community colleges and universities and the Department of Revenue. Moreover, access to ballot drop boxes, especially in rural, coastal, and frontier counties, remains a challenge for voters. For example, in Lane County, there are more than 90 precincts, but fewer than 20 ballot drop box locations. That's why I was proud to advance legislation that allows for A, postage paid envelopes, and B, ballots mailed on and just before election day to be fully tabulated. What the Secretary of State can do is coordinate with county election offices to determine strengths and needs, deploy resources, and provide critical oversight. In my capacity as Senate President pro tempore, I have already requested $5 to $10 million in resources for elections, security, and data upgrades. Safeguarding our democracy is a top priority.
Brent Barker, Heritage Foundation Election Integrity Scorecard ranks Oregon 47th with a score of 38 out of 100. Oregon leads in many categories, leading to low public confidence and poor public perception. We'll resolve any of Oregon's problems by fixing the election process. This will require responsible measures to return systems of voting that can be trusted. Brent Barker for Oregon, etc. He gives his stuff again. I will promote and build fair access to our democracy in the state of Oregon, making reliable tools available to achieve economic success in the capacity of Secretary of State. Our goal is to provide transparency and bring the voters' voice back to Oregon government. We have a plan called Oregon's Organic Voting Proposal, a statewide holiday for all state and federal elections, tax credit to employers that provide half and full day paid holiday to employees, statewide in-person voting, valid government-issued ID required to mail in ballots for military, and provisions for absentee voters. Voter registration rolls are all reset to 0, requiring new registration in lieu of costly audits, after which redo all voter registration every 8 years. Equal observers of major recounts of 51%. Proposals are open for debate and discussion, covering convening group interests, convening caucus to negotiation committee. We took for a transportation process that builds public confidence. Our campaign does not look to point fingers, rather we look to discuss solutions.
Who is that?
That is Brent Barker.
Paul Wells writes, the top 2 primary used to qualify candidates to nonpartisan office is a free and equal election process. The closed primaries used to qualify candidates to partisan office is not free and equal. I qualified as a Democratic candidate for Secretary of State by paying $100. Had I attempted to qualify as an independent candidate, instead I would have been forced to collect over 22,000 signatures. No jury in this state would ever affirm this as equal or fair. It's actually a variation on the well-known separate but equal doctrine. Unfortunately, even though the Oregon Constitution guarantees a jury trial in any civil case, the Oregon Supreme Court has never allowed a jury to make a finding of fact on any ballot access litigation. Few people are aware that the Secretary of State has a legal authority to issue orders to subordinate election officials concerning the conduct and interpretation of election law. The same authority that any judge has. As Secretary of State, my first official action would be to issue a temporary stay on the implementation of partisan primaries. The top 2 primary used for nonpartisan office must be used for every elective office until a jury in a civil court makes a finding of fact that partisan elections are free and equal. The Oregon Secretary of State is the only one with a legal authority to face down the Oregon Supreme Court and force a jury trial as mandated by the Oregon Constitution.
Tobias Reed, in many ways, Oregon is the model of free and fair elections for the nation. We just passed the 25th anniversary of vote by mail. Our system is safe and secure, but in the course of this campaign, I've met with 2/3 of our 36 county clerks and it's clear that there is more that the Secretary of State could be doing to improve people's confidence in our elections. Across our state, county elections officials face difficult decisions when making use of their limited funding, often resulting in outdated technology, a lack of security, and a shortage of employees. These are issues that I believe must be addressed because they will not only improve confidence in elections, but result in a work environment that results in higher retention and lower burnout among election workers. Ultimately, we must build a system that all Oregonians are confident is legitimate, where each vote is counted the same. The next Secretary of State will also be responsible for implementing recently passed campaign finance reform legislation that will rein in the role of money in our system of elections. It is imperative that we get this right, that we implement these reforms in a manner that strengthens trust in our elections. Doing so will help us improve on our system of free and equal elections.
We come now to the final question of the evening, and I will start it out. One moment here, while I turn my page. The three members of the State Land Board and the chair of the Oregon Sustainability Board, we must work toward balance so that all voters' voices are heard. We can subsequently ask, where are the job creation incentives that collaborate with public-private forest management to reduce fire risk and improve economic vitality? Or where are the job creation incentives that collaborate with public-private employment areas that reduce labor abuse and improve economic vitality? When values are clear, decisions are simplified. Advocacy's mission is to help small business, promote business startups, and advocate new business creation, identify tax incentives for new startups, reduce regulatory. Did I read the question before I started? That's why it seems so weird. It's late for the old man, so here's the, I'll pick it up again. The Small Business Advocacy Branch falls under the purview of the Oregon Secretary of State. What specific initiatives or programs do you plan to introduce or enhance to support small businesses in rural areas like Wasco County? Memory training would be good for moderators. Thank you, thank you. The Oregon Secretary of State represents all voters in Oregon. This is a constitutional position that holds the power of the audit. The governor holds the power of the veto. It is important these powers are used prudently and efficiently. Taxpayers must be assured the highest and best use of their tax dollars. Voters must feel confident their votes are secure. This is a position that demands neutrality, honesty, diplomacy, dispute resolution. Essentially, this is Oregon's ambassador of goodwill. Oregon needs to come together in the center, find areas of common ground, meet adverse views where they stand. I will be a voice for all voters, all parties, and bring transparency to the Oregon government. Our campaign does not sing to the choir. The office of Brett Barker for Oregon and PD Box 608, Beaverton, Oregon 97075, paid for by Brett Barker for Oregon.
Paul Wells writes, I appreciate that the Secretary of State may be in a position to help people all over Oregon in other ways, but election reform is my only priority. I will pursue this issue, and I expect that doing so will cripple me politically. I'll be doing very well just to survive. Judges in Oregon and elsewhere have almost unlimited power. If the governor or some other public official violates the Constitution, you can petition the courts for redress. But where do you go when the Supreme Court ignores the Constitution?
Tobias Reed, I'd like to make the Secretary of State's office a stronger partner to small businesses, not a bureaucratic hurdle. Our small businesses do so much for our communities. As Secretary of State, I will make sure that they have more of that time to focus on their products and services by cutting through unneeded red tape. For example, there is a lot we can do to make starting and operating a small business in Oregon easier, such as sending them the information we have on file and asking them to make any required changes instead of requiring them to fill out new forms each year. Simple procedural changes that turn an hours-long process into a minutes-long review should be prioritized. And I will work with entrepreneurs to see where we can make the process easier for them. As treasurer, I have encouraged the state treasurer to get out of our office in Salem and find new ways to bring our services to all Oregonians, particularly those who live outside the Portland metro area. We are a big, diverse state with communities that are facing different challenges and opportunities. One example of this is the Oregon College Savings Plan, which has historically served a population that is overwhelmingly urban, affluent, and white. In outreach with communities across the state, we have managed to widen the scope of the program, creating new guarantees like the Ontario Promise, which kickstarts old college savings plans created by residents of Ontario with an additional $100 contribution. This program is just one example of a simple initiative that has changed lives. Our data show that the mere existence of a college savings plan increases a student's likelihood of going to college by 300%, regardless of how much money is in the account. Partnering with a community like Ontario, which is rural, low income, and has a high percentage of non-white residents, allows us to expand the reach of a program to better serve all of Oregon. I will continue this approach as Secretary of State and will make sure we spend time in rural areas like Wasco County to hear perspectives on how we can better serve small businesses.
And I'll point out that James Manning, as eloquently read by Lisa Farquharson, did not submit an answer for this, so we are done. Give yourself all a big round of applause. I want to thank you for all being grown-ups tonight. Thank you all. Excellent.
Thank you guys so much for coming and sticking out with us and just being informed. I appreciate it. And thank you all of who's left of our candidates. Thank you guys so much for making the efforts and being here for our community. I appreciate it.